Hello, my name is Karen Taylor, and it's lovely to be here with you. I run an organisation called Working to Recovery with my husband, Ron Coleman, although he's mainly retired from this work now. Our website is www.workingtorecovery.co.uk. Please take a look. I'm here today to talk about our work over the last 25 years. And it's been a very lucky career for me. I actually started nursing 40 years ago in the mental health services in the UK and had quite a good career before I met Ron Coleman. But Ron really changed my life. He opened my eyes to a new world that said that mental illness is not an illness. It's not a disease. It is something that can happen to any of us, and it can happen quite often because of things that have happened in our lives. It can be the direct results from trauma, from poverty, from lack of hope, from a breakdown in society, from being too rich, bullying, violence inside and outside the family, war, abandonment, alcohol and drugs. There are many reasons why people become distressed. I don't believe in an illness called schizophrenia. In fact, to me, psychiatry has made a clumsy attempt to categorize the human condition into a group of diagnoses. What other branch of medicine comes together to roll out what an illness is? For the last 25 years, I've worked with Ron around the world, training mental health workers, other staff, people with lived experience of hearing voices, family members, to think about what has happened to them in different ways, in ways that allow them to take charge and become the person they were always meant to be. What does that mean? Well, all of us start life with dreams and ambitions, ideas, things that we want to do. I wanted to be an actor when I was a child. And at 16, I went away to college in Stratford-upon-Avon to study drama and the liberal arts for 2 years. What an amazing place to be, the home of Shakespeare, to do that. And I learnt many things, probably more life skills than actually study. And I had wanted to go on to drama college, but as usual, boys or men got in the way of that. And I ended up with my first partner when I came back from college at 18. For a couple of years, I did all kinds of little odd jobs and things. And then eventually I saw an advertisement to become a mental health nurse. I thought, well, why not? This sounds interesting. I had experience of mental illness in my own family. My mum had had postnatal depression when my sister was born, 6 years after me. And that was quite a sad and confusing time for me, watching my mother go through depression and having ECT, which I feel changed her forever. But she did recover. It took a while. She's always been quite a shy person. But it did have an impact, definitely, on me. What was interesting was, though, the first time I went into the mental health hospital to start my training, I felt very much at home. I didn't feel out of place. I loved the work almost immediately. We were thrown into an acute ward as our first place of training, and I actually really enjoyed working with and talking to those people who had unusual experiences and beliefs, or who were high, or described as manic. To me, these are the people that took my interest. But when I qualified, I firstly went and worked in dementia for 3 years, which was a really grounding experience. And I worked with families, people with dementia. And now Ron has early dementia. It feels as though I've come back round full circle to that work. But eventually, after 5 years, I went and worked as the leader of a mental health centre. It was an exciting time in mental health. Lots was happening. It was the beginning of the Hearing Voices movement. We had a Thorn course for nurses, which was based on lots of different ways of helping people with psychosis. And I was becoming revolutionised by hearing about the user movement and people with lived experience talking about how they thought services should be. And round about this time, I met Ron Coleman in 1998. I'd heard about his work. In fact, he'd even come to our day hospital and done a training. All my staff had gone, but I didn't because I was left holding the fort. So my first meeting with him was at a conference for community psychiatric nurses. It was a strange evening before his talk when we met. All of us nurses were dressed up in costumes for Star Wars, I think the theme was. I wasn't particularly dressed up in a Star Wars costume, but I had a slinky velvet trouser suit on. And Ron came and sat at our table. And I would say by the end of that evening, I'd already fallen for him. And I believe that he'd fallen for me too. And very soon we started living together. I already had 3 children at this point and was a single parent. So he was integrating into being in a family again after many years of living alone or just with a partner and being in the psych system before that as well. I think what I can honestly say is that I don't believe that schizophrenia or any mental health problem is disease based. I believe that all these things that we call illnesses, or that psychiatry calls illnesses, has been really a clumsy attempt to categorise the human condition into a group of diagnoses. What other branch of medicine comes together to vote on what an illness is? To me, distress that causes hearing voices and other psychotic problems result from trauma, from poverty, from lack of hope, from a breakdown in society, being too rich, bullying, violence inside and outside the family, war, abandonment, alcohol, and drugs. There are probably many other things that you could add on to this list. And to me, these issues, these things, this distress is what we should be working with the person about. So the first thing I would describe is the importance of story. What are the stories of the person that you're working with who hears voices? Or if you're a voice hearer, what are your stories? What are the stories that you have that may relate to why you hear voices? What is your life story? Where did you start your life? When did some of the problems come along that maybe made you unhappy? What are your secrets? What do you feel shame about? What do you keep hidden away that gnaws and gnaws at your mind until they become externalized by voices? Voices that remind you of perpetrators, voices that remind you of family members, voices that remind you of God, the devil, whatever it is. They usually are all really rooted in our lived experience, in our experiences of the programs we watch, in our experiences of our politics, in the experiences of our art and creativity, in the experiences of what life has thrown up for us. So, firstly, when I'm working with someone, relationship is probably one of the most important things. How do I build a relationship with that person so they feel trust? Quite often, I do that by, by telling parts of my story, parts that might relate to them, parts that show that I can also be vulnerable, that I've had my own ups and downs in this life, that nobody is perfect. Because quite often, what I have found in the past is people who have been in our mental health system for a long time think that somehow sane people are different. That magically we've never had life problems or have don't understand what it is to be psychotic. In fact, Ron has an exercise that he gets every worker to do, where he gets together three people in a group, and one becomes the voice hearer and two become voices, just so everyone can experience what it's like to hear voices. What's interesting though is probably most of us have inner voices. That voice in the head that tells you when you've been stupid or bad or inconsiderate or daft, or all the voices that say, well done, you did a good job there. Some of those voices may appear spiritual, may appear like guides to us that help us through difficult times and periods, or just there, that are there for comfort. So if we thought hard about it, all of us have some experiences of hearing voices. They may not be loud and externalized, but they're still there in our heads. Probably one of the most important things that we do when we first get to know someone is to find out their story, what's happened in their lives, and do a timeline. Quite often when we're doing this timeline, we draw it so that it can sit in the way with the personality of the person who's telling their story. Some people like to draw a river, some people like to draw trees, some people like to draw a road map, some people like to draw a walk, a hike through the mountains. There's often tributaries, dead ends, small minor roads where people have gone off for a while, places where they've got lost. And these all tell the story of that person and their journey through life. Once you have a journey, once you have a story, the next probably important thing is to talk to the person about their voices. The first thing that Ron and I tend to do is ask them how many voices they hear. Some people may only have one or two voices, others have multiple voices, but there are usually a small group that are stronger than all the rest or louder than all the rest. And we often ask the person what the names are of those voices and the characteristics. Are they male, female? Are they positive or negative? What are the kind of things that they say? And once we've written all these down and we have the story of the person, quite often you can see that there are possibilities that some of these voices represent periods in people's lives. And often the strongest voices are those for people who've had life experiences that are damaging. I often find that people who've had childhood sexual abuse often manage to bury their problems for quite a number of years. These often then re-emerge later, sometimes through another trauma like being raped, other times through an experience like giving birth, sometimes by the first time they have sex with a partner that's consensual. Sometimes much later, menopause is another time, often for women, when voices come back to haunt them. So again, we ask the persons, when do they first start hearing voices? Did those voices multiply? Where do people hear voices? Do they hear them when they're just alone and in their bedroom? Or do they hear them when they're outside and with other people? One of the main problems we think for voice hearers is that quite often when they're out in society, they're seen to be talking to themselves. This used to be a real problem in the 1980s and early 90s when we started this work. But now, as everyone has mobile phones and everybody has earplugs in, it's really hard to tell these days whether people are responding to their voices or just having an argument or a talk on a mobile phone. So it's much more easy to normalise the experience. So if you have a voice hearer who can't afford a mobile phone and you've got an old mobile that you don't use anymore, just give them that. It doesn't even need to work. They can just attach it to a pair of headphones and take it out with them. And then if they do start to have that experience of hearing voices and they need to answer back, they can just pick up their phone out of their pocket and answer back, and nobody will bat an eyelid. This work, though, does and can take some time. Some people, once they understand the process, can go on a very quick journey of recovery. Others need more support, and this is where Hearing Voices groups can come in. Ron was the first national coordinator of the UK-wide Scottish and Welsh and Irish Hearing Voices groups to begin with, until they set up their own organisations. And he went from the UK with a handful of groups to having well over 100 groups before he left as the national coordinator. We then went on to train all around the world, and now and along with others who trained in different parts, in different countries, there is a network of organisations right across the globe who are trying to change the way that we think about hearing voices. I personally think we still have a long way to go in turning psychiatry around. I think the drug industry is incredibly powerful, although it seems to be abandoning mental health at the moment because there are no new drugs coming into mental health, because all the wonder drugs that they started in the 1980s, 1990s have shown to be not that effective and have too many side effects. So I do think our hope for the future has to come from the kind of work that we're doing with people, which is really talking and being with a person and exploration of what is going on for them. Equally important though, whoever you're working with, there needs to be a sense of hope and there needs to be a sense of future. So we also use a tool called PATH, which is called Planning Alternative Tomorrow with Hope. And it's a person-centered planning tool that comes from Canada, and it was started by a man called Jack Pierpoint. And in this tool, you start off with a dream of who you want to be in the future. And this can be wild and wonderful. It doesn't have to be ordinary. It's a dream. So it could be that you want to go into space or all kinds of things. But then you break it down and come back to, where could I be in the next year? What do I have to do to get there in this year? What are my goals and steps? Who do I need to enroll around me to help me achieve those goals? And I think it's also as important as talking about the past and coming to terms with the past, actually looking and seeing that you can have a future, that you can go back to college, that you can get a job, that you can be the person that you always thought you could be, that you can go on to marry, have kids, or whatever it is that you want to do in the world is possible. And I think it's a really important factor, sometimes forgotten, that, if we spend too much time on just talking about the problems and not enough time on who in the world you would like to become, you lose something. What is all the work for? There has to be, if you like, some kind of reason for wanting to get better, for wanting to be in charge of your own voices. My life has been amazing. I think that most of my lessons in life have come from voice hearers, from people that I've worked with, from being privileged to travel to many countries across the world, to also have the privilege of working with people from Indigenous culture. And I do think the other thing that I haven't mentioned, and I think is really important, that often voices can be spiritual as well, or can have spiritual meanings, particularly for people of indigenous culture who are still in touch with their culture. Because many cultures, Native American cultures in the US and Canada, Maori culture, Australian original peoples of Australia, African nations, tribes that are still in touch with their cultural stories and history, often are natural voice hearers. And that means that people would be more worried that people within their tribes did not hear the voices of their ancestors. So another, if you like, aspect of my work is looking at the ancestors. I can look at this even with my own family. My grandmother was illegitimate and deeply shamed by that within her life. This then had an impact on my mum, and I'm sure also impacted then on why she got postnatal depression at 23. But also the stories of my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother died in the poorhouse. She'd also been in mental institutions, and her diagnosis was that she was over worrying about stomach problems. It wasn't until she died in the poorhouse that they found out that actually her stomach was riddled with illness, and it wasn't psychiatric at all. But there we go. But for Indigenous people, quite often the voices that they hear, the troublesome voices, are from things that have happened in the ancestral tree that have never been closed, or there's not been closure from. And quite often the Indigenous healer will see the ancestors who are there and will have the knowledge to help the person to help heal the wrong that's been done or put right what they can. So those voices may leave them. And these voices are obviously different than guide voices. Many people have guide voices that are harmful in that they are just there to help that person with that little bit of extra wisdom through their life. Now, these aren't voices in the sense of voices that tell people all the time, this is what you've got to do, you know, and you've got to do this and you've got to do that. Those are much more commanding voices. But guide voices are, if you like, wise voices very often, that are just there, and you know in your gut that what they're saying is right. So for me, spirituality is another thing is it's really important to understand when we're working with somebody. And quite often people can be opened up to spiritual experiences through drugs that they may have taken. This doesn't mean that their spiritual experiences aren't real, but it also needs to be checked out as to what influence the drugs that they've been on. And I'm talking here about things like LSD, mushrooms, etc., has had on them. For us as well, it's important to work with the family. And we often talk to family members about voice hearing, about the reasons why voice hearing can be seen as not a disease process, not an illness as such, but as dis-ease. Separating out those two words, because if you think about it, dis-ease is often the case. People are upset, are angry, are out of sorts, but usually at the bottom of that is a problem that can be solved with support and help from others, and that may be family members as well. Often they are left to be the main carers of people who are hearing voices. So the more understanding they have, the better. One of the other things that we can often do is talk directly to the voices. And this may seem a strange concept, but it's actually perfectly reasonable, normal, and easy to do. And that, once you have the permission of the voice hearer to access the voices, you can just ask the voice hearer who's present. If you've already given them a name, they can say, well, Peter's present. And you can say, well, can I ask Peter a question about why he's here, or what he's wanting, or what he's thinking at the moment, or what is happening? And it's another way, one, to show that you don't have to be frightened of voices, but also, two, to show how a voice hearer may dialogue differently with their voices, particularly if they spend a lot of time arguing their voices or shouting at them or trying to ignore them. And all of those take a lot of energy and often don't have a lot of success. I would encourage anyone who is watching this video to have a look at the Intervoice website, to go to some conferences and events. I know that I'm doing this day so that hopefully you can help fundraise for a group to go to Copenhagen for this year's World Hearing Voices Congress in September. Unfortunately, I won't be there this year, but I hope that you have a great time at the event and that you learn a lot. I've certainly got many learning experiences over the years from being at those conferences myself, including organising 2 or 3 of them. And I can tell you that is quite a tiring and stressful thing to do, but very rewarding at the end when you see how much good has been done by bringing people together who both hear voices and our family members and our workers all together in an atmosphere where everybody can learn from each other. And I suppose that's really the key thing I would like to say today is we are all students. We are all learning from each other all the time. And the best person to teach us how to work with a voice hearer is the voice hearer themselves. Because every experience that you have with each voice hearer will be different and will add to your skills, but also your sense of awe at what people who hear voices are able to still manage to do, despite the fact that they could have loud, distressing voices around all day and sometimes into the night. I hope you found this lecture useful. As it's only a short lecture, it's very difficult to go into great detail, but you can find books from our website. I would particularly recommend Working with Voices and The Voice Inside if you're interested in the voices world. Also, Marius Roman-Sanderesh's stories of 50 voice hearers who have recovered is very good. We also have several online courses on the website. We have several courses around setting up hearing voices groups and working with voices that are available at fairly reasonable prices. I also run 2 residentials a year where people can come together to learn over 6 days. I would hope that someday in the future I can meet some of you. I hope you learn a lot from your experiences of working with voice hearers or being a voice hearer, and always know that there is always hope.